There is a radio frequency that Australian air traffic controllers still have on record. The recording is 6 minutes and 17 seconds long. In it, a young pilot describes something above him, something with 4 bright lights, something with a green glow and a shiny metal surface, something that orbited his aircraft at speeds he could not measure. He uses the word hovering. He uses the word orbiting. He uses the phrase not an aircraft. At the end of the recording, for 17 seconds, there is a sound, metallic scraping, like something tearing, and then the frequency goes silent. The pilot's name was Frederick Valentich. He was 20 years old. It was the evening of Saturday, October 21st, 1978. He was flying a single-engine Cessna over Bass Strait, off the southern coast of Australia. Neither he nor his aircraft were ever found. Frederick Valentich was born on June 9, 1958, in Melbourne, Australia. He wanted more than anything to fly. He had wanted it since childhood. He had joined the Air Training Corps as a teenager, attended every session, and spent years working toward a commercial pilot's license. By October 1978, he had accumulated 150 hours of total flight time modest by professional standards, sufficient for the kind of flight he was planning. He had twice applied to join the Royal Australian Air Force, twice been rejected, inadequate educational qualifications. He had twice failed all 5 subjects of the commercial license examination. As recently as the month before his disappearance, he had failed 3 more. He had received a warning for straying into a controlled zone over Sydney. He was facing potential prosecution for twice deliberately flying into cloud. He was, in the official language of the investigation that would eventually assess his case, a pilot of limited experience and poor technical judgment. He was also, by every account from those who knew him, a young man who believed absolutely in the existence of UFOs. His father, Guido, would later confirm this. His girlfriend, Rhonda Rushton, would confirm it too. He read about them. He talked about them. He was, by his father's description, ardently convinced they were real. 6 days before his disappearance, Frederick told Rhonda that he was worried about being taken by one. She did not think he was joking. The intended destination was King Island, a small island in the middle of Bass Strait, approximately 125 nautical miles south of Melbourne. What Frederick intended to do there is not known. He told flight officials that he was going to pick up friends. He told others that he was going to collect crayfish. Neither story was true. Investigators confirmed that no one was expecting him on King Island that day, and no arrangement of any kind had been made. He had also failed to notify King Island Airport of his intended arrival, which was against standard procedure. The reasons for the flight have never been established. At 6:19 in the evening, Frederick Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport in his Cessna 182L, registration VHDSJ. The weather was clear. Visibility was good. The Bass Strait crossing, for a pilot of his experience, was routine. He climbed 4,500 feet and turned south toward the strait. For the first 47 minutes, there was nothing unusual. The aircraft behaved normally. Frederick maintained contact with Melbourne Flight Service. The transit was unremarkable. Then, at 7:06 in the evening, he called in. Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000? Delta Sierra Juliet was his call sign, his aircraft's registration letters, VHDSJ. The Melbourne Flight Service controller replied immediately. Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic. Frederick's next transmission came 9 seconds later. IM seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. The controller asked what type of aircraft it was. Delta Sierra Juliet. I cannot affirm. It is 4 bright, and it seems to me like landing lights. A pause of 14 seconds. Then, Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. The aircraft has just passed over me, at least 1,000 feet above. The controller confirmed. A large aircraft moving at speed. He asked if there was any Air Force activity in the area. There was not. Delta Sierra Juliet, no known aircraft in the vicinity. 30 seconds passed, then Frederick's voice returned. Melbourne, it's approaching now from due east towards me. Another pause. Delta Sierra Juliet, it seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me 2 to 3 times at speeds I could not identify. The controller asked for his level. My level is 4,500. 4500. The controller confirmed his transponder code. Told him to report, passing Cape Otway Wilco. 13 seconds of silence. Then, Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. A pause. Then, in the same transmission, it is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. The controller asked him to describe the object. Delta Sierra Juliet, as it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify more that it has such speed. It's before me right now. Melbourne. The controller asked how large the object was. Delta Sierra Juliet, Melbourne. It seems like it's stationary. What I'm doing right now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It's got a green light and sort of metallic-like. It's all shiny on the outside. A silence of 26 seconds. Then, a single transmission. 2 words. It's just vanished. The controller asked him to confirm. Asked if the aircraft was still with him. Delta Sierra Juliet. It's, now approaching from the southwest. Then, Delta Sierra Juliet. The engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 2324, and the thing is. He was coughing at the time of saying. The controller asked for his intentions. My intentions are to go to King Island. Melbourne, that strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. A pause, and he says, it is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. That was at 7:09 in the evening. At 7:12, the Melbourne controller called Delta Sierra Juliet one final time. The microphone on Frederick Valentich's end was opened, and stayed open. For 17 seconds, the frequency carried a metallic sound, described by investigators as a scraping, a grinding, something mechanical, or something that sounded like it. Then silence. Frederick Valentich transmitted nothing further. He was never heard from again. The controller continued calling for the next hour. Delta Sierra Juliet, Delta Sierra Juliet, Delta Sierra Juliet. But no response. The controller's voice on the recording is even. Controlled, professional. He calls the registration letters with the steady cadence of someone who does not yet believe what has happened. At some point, he stopped, not because he gave up, because there was nothing left to call. Somewhere over Bass Strait, in clear weather, with a functioning radio and 17 seconds of open microphone, Frederick Valentich had ceased to exist as a recoverable presence. The sky gave nothing back. A sea and air search began within hours. It involved ocean-going ship traffic, a Royal Australian Air Force, Lockheed P-3 Orion maritime patrol aircraft, 8 civilian aircraft, and a search area of more than 1,000 square miles of Bass Strait. The Bass Strait runs between the Australian mainland and the island of Tasmania. It is a body of water that does not forgive errors. It is shallow in places, treacherous in others. Its tidal patterns are complex. Its floor, in some areas, has never been fully mapped. The search continued for 4 days. On October 25, 1978, the search operation called off. No trace of the aircraft had been found. No trace of Frederick Valentich, No wreckage, no fuel slick, no debris field, nothing at all. 5 years passed. Then, in 1983, an engine cowl flap was found washed ashore on Flinders Island, to the northeast of where the aircraft had last been reported. The Bureau of Air Safety Investigation confirmed that it had came from a Cessna 182 within a specific range of serial numbers. That range included VHDSJ, one piece, a coal flop. That is all the ocean returned. The Department of Transport Air Safety Investigation Branch closed the case, number 78 by 3023, with a finding of cause. Not determined, presumed fatal. Investigation points in different angle and has brings several theories. The first, spatial disorientation. In 2013, an astronomer and a retired U.S. Air Force pilot, James Magaha, and investigator Joe Nickel, reviewed the transcripts in detail. Their conclusion was that Valentich was an inexperienced pilot who was flying at night over open water with no horizon reference. That made him disoriented. He entered what is known as a graveyard spiral. It is a descending turn that tightens invisibly, and for that the pilot cannot feel because the G-forces. The rough idling he reported is consistent with fuel starvation in a prolonged banked descent. The lights he reported, the 4 bright lights, the green glow, and the stationary object, that were, in their assessment, likely the planets Venus, Mars, and Mercury, along with the bright star Antares. That was visible on that evening, behaving in exactly the way he described as his aircraft rotated around them. He was not seeing something above him. He was seeing the sky as his aircraft turned, inverted, descended. He may have been looking at his own navigation lights, reflected in the water below Gout. He did not know he was dying. He thought something else was happening. The second possibility, a staged disappearance. The Cessna 182L, despite the 47 minutes already spent in the air, still carried enough fuel to travel more than 800 kilometers from Cape Otway. And yet, at no point during the flight was the aircraft ever captured on radar. Not once. This absence raises a disturbing question. Was Frederick Valentich ever where he claimed to be? On that same night, Melbourne police received a report of a light aircraft making a strange, unexplained landing not far from Cape Otway, but none of it was ever confirmed. No evidence. No trace. Nothing that could be proven. And after October 21st, Frederick Valentich was never seen again. No verified contact. No confirmed survival. Just silence. Possibility number 3, the film theory. A movie named A Close Encounter of the Third Kind had been released less than a year before the disappearance. It was everywhere. In conversation, in the imagination of the time, and especially among the young people. Also in pilots, aviation enthusiasts, and UFO believers. Investigator Brian Dunning later pointed out something unsettling. A part of Frederick Valentich's radio transmission bears something resemblance to a scene in that film. From this comes a strong, uncomfortable possibility that Frederick was 20 years old, alone over open water, already interested in UFO phenomena, may have been influenced by what he had seen, that he may have been performing, improvising, talking into the void for attention, for curiosity, for something to break the silence of the night. And that, in doing so, he may have drifted into distraction, into disorientation, into the kind of spatial confusion that leaves no time to recover. He was 20 years old. He believed in UFOs, and the most popular film of the previous year was about contact. The fourth and the final. What UFOlogists have always argued, that something real was there, that the green light, the metallic surface, the reported speed, the described orbiting motion, were not errors of perception, and not misidentifications. That Frederick Valentich encountered something above Bass Strait that night, which still has no accepted explanation. And that the final sound on the recording, the metallic scraping, the distortion, the abrupt end, was not simply structural failure of a small aircraft in distress, that it was something else. But the official position remains unchanged. The Department of Transport did not endorse these interpretations. Neither did they explicitly dismiss every aspect of them. They ruled nothing out. They confirmed nothing. They determined no definitive cause. And in the official record of Australia, the disappearance of Frederick Valentich and his aircraft remains not determined. The recording as evidence still exists. The full Melbourne Flight Service audio is preserved by the National Archives of Australia under Department of Transport. Air Safety Investigation Branch Case 78-3023. It is accessible. It has been reproduced. For 47 years, people have listened to it. There is something about hearing it that the transcript does not prepare you for. The words are strange enough on their own, but what truly changes the experience are the pauses, the gaps between transmissions, the hesitation suspended in static. The sound of a controller in a building in Melbourne asking questions into a frequency that is steadily thinning, becoming quieter in real time. The final statement that Frederick Valentich made, the last words before the 17 seconds of scraping, was that something was hovering above him and that it was not an aircraft. He repeated this claim twice within the same transmission, as if ensuring it was permanently and unambiguously recorded, as if he understood that what he was describing required documentation, that the record itself mattered. He was 20 years old. He was flying alone over open water at night. 6 days earlier, he had already expressed concern about being taken. Bass Strait still separates mainland Australia from Tasmania. Ships cross it daily. Aircraft cross it daily. No trace of the aircraft has ever been recovered, nor of Frederick Valentich. The only physical remnant tied to the flight is the cowl flap, the sole fragment confirming that the Cessna 182L, registered VHDSJ, departed south from Moorabbin and never returned. The recording runs for 6 minutes and 17 seconds. At its conclusion, there is only silence. Aftermath and absence. Frederick Valentich left behind his father Guido, who spent decades speaking with journalists, investigators, and anyone willing to listen. A father who maintained, until the end of his life, that his son had not simply crashed, and that the recording was speaking for itself in ways others refused to accept. He also left behind his girlfriend, Rhonda Rushton, who recalled a conversation about UFOs 6 days before the flight, and a young man already carrying fear that something might happen to him. He left behind 150 hours of flight experience, 2 failed examination attempts, a file of formal warnings, and an unfinished ambition of becoming a commercial pilot, a path he never completed. What remains is a 6-minute recording, an official case number, and 17 seconds of unexplained sound that has never been fully resolved. His name was Frederick Valentich. He was 20 years old. In the official records of the Australian Department of Transport, he remains listed as presumed fatal. Cause not determined. The sky above Bass Strait remains unchanged. It carries no memory of what passed through it, offering no explanation, no residue, and no return.